It was a cold evening when I first heard from them again, my family. I had all but erased them from my life, and I thought they'd done the same with me. But there it was, my phone buzzed as I poured the coffee. A message. An old video from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mrs. Langford, our former neighbor. The name alone caught me off guard. I hadn't heard from anyone connected to my family for so long that I wasn't sure whether it was a joke or some kind of sick prank. Mrs. Langford was the kind of person who'd always smile politely at our front door, but this was different. She had never been one to reach out unless something was wrong. The last time I'd seen her, I was a teenager, trying to avoid a dinner invitation where I knew the tension between me and my parents was unbearable. My finger hovered over the screen. I knew I had no real reason to care, but curiosity won out. I tapped the play button. The video started with the shaky frame of a church, St. Albans. The camera slowly zoomed in on the pulpit. There, standing with their backs to the camera, were two figures I knew all too well, my parents. The same people who had, only a few years ago, declared me a disappointment, disowning me in front of the world, like I was nothing more than a stain they could wipe away. But something about seeing them again, standing there so calmly, so solemn, it made my stomach churn. They weren't alone. Behind them, framed in a sea of white flowers, was a casket. And beside it, my photograph. A large one, framed and surrounded by wreaths of roses. My heart stopped. No, this couldn't be happening. I leaned closer to the screen, tried to make sense of it, but the image remained clear. My mother's voice cut through the silence of the video. She was always troubled, she said, her voice quiet but cold. But we loved her. We did everything we could. I nearly dropped my phone. They were speaking about me. They were talking about my death. I was still alive. I hadn't died in any car crash. I wasn't even sick. I was standing in my apartment, feeling the weight of a reality I couldn't fully comprehend. I hit rewind, played the video again, then again. But the facts didn't change. My mother, calm and controlled, dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. She wasn't crying. Her sobs seemed practiced, rehearsed. She spoke of tragic accidents and how I had lost my way in life, how I'd spent my final years in isolation. But I had been living. I was working, surviving, breathing. My father's voice joined hers. He stood stiffly behind the podium, reading from a sheet of paper. Though she left this world far too young, he said, we pray her soul finds peace. I wanted to scream. This was a lie. A cold, calculated lie. But why? Why would they do this? They had disowned me years ago, but to go this far? To declare me dead, to hold a funeral for me when I was still very much alive? I stood frozen, my hands shaking as I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to make sense of it. There was no accident. No car crash. No overseas tragedy. The words they spoke, those were the lies they wanted to feed the world. I played the video again, searching for some clue, some hint that it was all a mistake. But the more I watched, the more it became clear. This wasn't just an error. This wasn't a case of misunderstanding. They had done this deliberately. And there was something much deeper at play. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, the phone still in my hands, my mind reeling. How could they do this? How could they erase me so thoroughly that they would hold a memorial, invite relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and mourn me as if I had never existed? But no one had even tried to reach me. Not once in all these years. No calls. No messages. No letters. Not even a question about whether I was okay. I was dead to them, but I wasn't dead at all. My breath quickened as the realization sank in. They didn't just erase me, they buried me alive. And I was about to find out why. I couldn't stop watching the video. Over and over again I played it trying to make sense of the images, their calm faces, the eerie stillness of the scene. My parents. The people who had once been my world. The ones who claimed to love me, only to erase me as though I was nothing more than an inconvenient mistake. But why? Why go to such extremes? Why not just let me fade away, quietly, like they had before? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I thought I was prepared for everything that had happened between us, the betrayal, the disowning, but this felt like something much darker. Something more calculated. Something far beyond mere family rejection. The more I thought about it, the more I realized they hadn't just abandoned me. They'd replaced me. And it wasn't just the public, it wasn't just our friends, they had replaced me with Elena. Elena, the golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. I had always been the rebel, the one who questioned everything, the one who pushed boundaries. Elena, she was everything my parents wanted, obedient, quiet, well-behaved. And now, I was nothing more than a shadow to her. I grabbed my phone and started typing, my fingers moving quickly. First, I reached out to my Aunt Rachel. She'd always been close to me, sneaking me sweets when my parents weren't looking, offering me little moments of rebellion when I needed it most. Maybe she knew something. Maybe she had some answer, some way of explaining why they had done this to me. I dialed her number, trying not to feel the rush of anxiety crawling up my throat. The phone rang once, twice, and then she picked up. Hello. Her voice sounded so normal, so detached. Aunt Rachel, it's me. It's Maya. Silence. A long pause. Then a click. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, stunned. What the hell? I tried calling again, but was blocked. It was like she had never even heard me. Like I was nothing. The sting of that rejection felt worse than I expected. My hands shook as I lowered my phone and stared at it for a long time. Then, with a sigh, I moved on to the next person, my cousins. We had been close when we were younger. Surely they would believe me. One cousin responded almost immediately, a thumbs-up emoji and nothing more. I texted again, but no response came. The next cousin replied, but her message was a slap in the face. Is this some kind of sick joke? She asked, followed by a string of question marks. I felt my throat tighten. But then a third message came through. This one from my youngest cousin, Sam. He had always looked up to me when we were kids. His text was hesitant but simple. Maya, are you really alive? I almost dropped the phone. I couldn't believe someone actually believed me. It felt like a lifeline, a tether to the reality I knew I had been cut off from. Yes, I typed back quickly, I'm alive. But what do you know? What did they tell everyone? Sam's reply came after a long pause, the bubbles of typing floating on my screen for what felt like forever. They said you died in a car crash overseas 3 years ago, he finally wrote back. That it happened while you were traveling. They said it was too late to bring your body back, so they had a closed casket funeral. Cremation. Everything. I felt a coldness settle deep inside me, like the air had turned suddenly frigid. A car crash. There was no car crash. I had never even owned a car while I was abroad. Everything they had said about me, everything they had done, was a lie. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could they have gotten away with it? How could they have lied to the entire world about me? The truth was buried somewhere, deep inside a pile of documents and false stories. I had to find out what they were hiding. So I started digging. I logged into the public records office online, hoping to find some answers. I didn't expect much, but as soon as the search results popped up, I felt the ground beneath me shift. There it was in black and white, Maya Dekwa, date of death July 16th, cause, road accident. Status, deceased. Certificate ID, AR F91327. My stomach lurched. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My own death certificate. A certificate I had never signed. A death I never agreed to. I scrolled down further. They had even gone as far as to make it official. A legal document. The lie was complete. But what were they hiding? What was so worth covering up that they had gone to such extremes? I shut my laptop and leaned back, my mind racing. There was no accident. There was no death. They had forged it all. And now, I was buried in a lie so deep I couldn't see the bottom. But one thing was clear, I wasn't dead. I wasn't gone. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely sleeping, barely eating. All I could think about was the lies, the fabrication of my death, and the strange feeling that had settled deep in my bones. I wasn't just a victim here. I was a pawn in something much bigger, something far darker than I could have imagined. I couldn't stop thinking about Elena, my sister, the one who had everything handed to her, the one who was now living the life I should have had. When I had left, I'd assumed she would carry on with her perfect life, unaffected by my disappearance. But this wasn't just about my family throwing me away. This was about Elena stepping into my place, taking what was mine. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was seeing everything clearly for the first time. Elena hadn't just replaced me. She had become the perfect daughter in their eyes, the one who could never do wrong, the one who could take everything they had promised me. I had worked hard for my future, for my trust fund, for the life I wanted, but in a blink of an eye, they had taken it all and given it to her. I thought back to the day I was disowned. The harsh words my mother had spoken still echoed in my mind. Better one ruined daughter than two. They had chosen Elena, and they had made me the scapegoat for everything. The money, the reputation, the perfect family image, it all meant more to them than I ever did. And now I was nothing. To them, I was already dead. To the world, I had disappeared without a trace. But I wasn't dead. I wasn't gone. I sat in my small apartment, the silence of a room pressing in on me. The city outside seemed so far away, so distant. But I had to act. I had to make them pay for what they'd done. They had erased me, tried to bury me, but I was still here. I was going to expose everything. I started by pulling up Elena's social media accounts. I knew that if I dug deep enough, I would find something that could lead me to the truth. I scrolled through her Instagram, her perfect life laid out in glossy photos, exotic vacations, lavish parties, expensive jewelry. But then I found it. A photo from her wedding. It wasn't just any photo. It was the one that had tipped me over the edge. A photo of her standing next to her husband, her arm draped lovingly around him. And next to them, my father. He was holding a wine glass, smiling widely as if he was proud of this perfect union. The caption? To the one daughter who always made us proud. It hit me like a punch to the gut. They hadn't just erased me, they had replaced me, replaced the person I was with this image of Elena, this perfect version of what they wanted. My father's face in that photo looked nothing like the man who had once been my protector. This was a man who had chosen his daughter, his new daughter, and I was nothing but a ghost in the background. I clicked on the next post and found another wedding photo. This one was different, though. The faces were all there, Aunt Rachel, cousins, family, friends, but not me. Not even a hint of my presence. It was like I had never existed. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. They weren't just pretending I was dead. They had erased me so completely that even the people I had once loved and trusted had no memory of me. They didn't even know I was alive. No one knew. Not a single person had reached out. I could feel the anger rising in my chest. They thought they could get away with it. They thought they could bury me alive, and no one would ever know the truth. But they were wrong. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed the number for the lawyer I had contacted. I needed to move quickly. The longer I waited, the more time they had to cover their tracks. I wasn't going to let them win. The phone rang twice before the lawyer picked up. Hello. I need to challenge my death certificate, I said, my voice steady despite the fire burning inside me. There was a pause on the other end. You want to do what? The lawyer sounded surprised, but there was something else in his voice, a hint of curiosity, maybe even intrigue. I'm not dead, I said, my voice firmer now. I need to take action to revoke my death certificate. I need to find out who forged it and why they did it. He was silent for a moment. You've got proof. I have everything. Passport stamps, employment records, flight records. They've been lying, and I'm going to make them pay for it. Well, if you've got the documents, we can file a fraud complaint. But I'll be honest with you, this is going to take time. The system doesn't move quickly, and we're dealing with a lot of red tape here. But I'll help you. I nodded to myself. I knew this was going to be a long road, but was the only road I had left. I was going to make them pay. I wasn't going to let them get away with erasing me from existence. This was only the beginning, and I would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. The days dragged on like molasses. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the endless questions, pressed down on me every waking moment. I had never felt so alone in my life. I was fighting not just for justice, but for my very identity, for the person I used to be. The lawyer had begun the process of challenging my death certificate, but I could feel time slipping away, like sand in an hourglass. Every moment that passed was another moment for my family to cover their tracks, to erase whatever fragile remnants of me were left. I spent hours poring over the documents, the records that could prove my existence. My passport was the first thing I found, a relic of a life I once had, a life I was trying to reclaim. The stamps were like pieces of a puzzle, each one representing a place I had been, a decision I had made. But as I traced each stamp, a chilling realization dawned on me. This wasn't just about proving I was alive. This was about exposing the web of lies that had been spun around me for years. I needed to dig deeper. I needed to know why my family had done this. Why they'd gone to such extremes to erase me, to rewrite my history. Why hadn't anyone reached out? A few of them agreed to testify. A few others gave me information that would prove invaluable. The web my parents had woven was unraveling, strand by strand, and I was determined to follow it wherever it led. Then came the tipping point. I was at the cafe one afternoon when I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Rachel. The same aunt who had hung up on me a few days before. She never called me, not after everything that had happened. I hesitated before answering. Maya, she said, her voice tight. I know what you're doing. I know you're fighting them. And I need you to listen to me. Stop. I felt my stomach tighten. What are you talking about? I don't want to see you destroy what's left of this family, she continued, her words cold and filled with something I couldn't quite place. You don't know what you're dealing with. Your parents, your father, they'll stop at nothing to protect themselves. You're making a mistake, Maya. You're playing a dangerous game. Maybe I am, I said, my voice steady despite the anger that was building inside me. But I'm not the one who started it. They did. And they're going to pay. Just be careful, she warned, her voice now tinged with fear. There are things you don't know. Things you're not ready to hear. Before I could respond, she hung up. Her warning echoed in my mind as I sat there in the cafe, staring at my phone. Was I playing with fire? Was I risking more than I could handle? It didn't matter. There was no turning back now. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. The final chapter of this twisted tale was now unfolding, and I could feel the tension building, like the quiet before a storm. The evidence was in place, the case was ready, but there was one thing left to do: make them see the truth. I couldn't just win in court. I needed them to know I was alive. I needed them to see me, standing before them, reminding them of the lies they'd told for so long. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everything they had tried to erase. For the woman they had buried alive. For the future they had stolen. And most importantly, for the girl who had once believed in the lies they told her. The day of the memorial arrived. It wasn't a funeral. It wasn't a celebration of life. It was their final act of control, the last shred of power they had over my existence. They had already tried to bury me once, but this time, I was going to bury their lies. I stood across the street from St. Albans, watching as the mourners trickled in. The church looked as grand as ever, its stained glass windows casting colorful light on the pavement, its towering spires piercing the sky like a monument to their deception. Inside, the ceremony was already underway. I could hear the faint hum of organ music from where I stood, the sound carrying on the wind, but I wasn't about to play the part of the invisible ghost they thought they had created. The doors were wide open, and the crowd was gathered, their faces painted with the same grief they had rehearsed for years. My mother, the actress, was front and center, feigning sorrow with a delicacy that made my blood boil. My father stood beside her, stoic as ever, his eyes scanning the room, ensuring that his performance would not falter. And then there was Elena, standing at the front, pearls clasped tightly in her hands, her gaze distant, as if she had perfected the art of pretending to mourn for a sister she never cared about. I could almost hear the script in my head, the words they had memorized. She was troubled, but we loved her. She lost her way, but we never stopped hoping she'd come back to us. It was all lies. All of it. I crossed the street slowly, my heart pounding, my mind sharp with the knowledge that this was it. This was the moment I had been working toward, and nothing, not even the fear that still lingered in my chest, was going to stop me. As I approached the church, the weight of the door in my hand felt like a symbolic gesture, a final push to shatter the illusion they had spent so long building. I pulled it open. The gasp that followed was almost deafening. The church fell silent, all eyes turning toward the door, towards me. I walked in slowly, deliberately, every step echoing across the marble floor. My parents were the first to notice me, their faces draining of color as recognition hit. My mother's lips trembled, her mask of grief cracking in an instant. She crumpled onto the pew, gasping for air as if she had seen a ghost. No, she hadn't seen a ghost. She had seen her daughter, the one she thought she had buried. My father's expression was unreadable at first. Then slowly, his mouth fell open, a wine glass slipping from his hands, shattering on the floor. The shock in his eyes was almost too much to bear, but I held his gaze, refusing to look away. Elena's reaction was the most telling. Her eyes locked on mine, her face draining of all color, her hand shaking as she dropped her champagne glass. Her expression was a mix of disbelief and fear. She wasn't just seeing her sister. She was seeing the truth she had so carefully hidden from the world. I stood at the front of the church beneath my own portrait, the same one they had used to eulogize me, the one they had displayed at my funeral. The irony of it hit me hard. There I was, the woman they had buried, standing in front of them, a living testament to the lies they had spun. "May I have your attention?" I said, my voice calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The room was still, all eyes on me, as I spoke into the silence. "I've heard the story they've told. The one about my death, about the accident they claimed took me away from this world. But I'm here to correct that story. I could feel the weight of their stares, their disbelief, their shock. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. There was no accident, I continued, taking a step forward. No tragic car crash overseas. There was no closed casket because my body was unrecognizable. I'm here to tell you that I've been alive. I've been working. I've been living. The only thing I lost was them. I turned to face my parents, and I saw their faces contort with panic, with guilt. They had lied to the world, but now the truth was before them. They declared me dead, I said, holding up a folder with the forged death certificate. They created this lie to cover up their own sins. They erased me, legally, so they could keep their secrets. But I'm here to expose them. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. I shifted my gaze to Elena. And you, I said, my voice steady but filled with a cold fury. You didn't just replace me. You took everything that belonged to me. My trust fund, my inheritance, everything. You used my death as an opportunity to get what you wanted. Elena opened her mouth to speak, but I silenced her with a raised hand. Don't say a word, I told her, my tone final. You've already said enough. A murmur rippled through the room as people began to grasp the magnitude of what they were hearing. Phones were being raised, cameras clicking as the truth spread like wildfire. My lawyer had been right. Once the proof was in the open, there was no escaping it. I'm not dead, I said, turning back to my parents. But you've buried the truth, and now you'll have to live with it. You can no longer hide behind your lies. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door, my footsteps louder than before, as if each one was a nail in the coffin of their carefully crafted world. The bells of St. Albans began to toll, their sound echoing through the church like a fitting end to this twisted chapter of my life. And as I stepped out into the light, the world was watching, and the truth had finally come to the surface.